Hi, and welcome back to Realistic Sustainability. I'm Mike, and I am here with the heartthrob we know as Nick.
Well, you know what they say. When God gives you a gift, you have to use it.
Well, I'm trying to up the volume a little bit today because I know neither of us are caffeinated. No one has had coffee this morning, so I'm going to start with apologizing to everybody who's listening.
Yeah, it's a wise choice. It is very, very, very true. Neither one of us have had any caffeine. Yeah, I'm dragging. I'm tired. I've been up for a while, but I just can't seem to get my gears to turn.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, of course, here I am last second contacting Nick going, when can we record? And the options were right now or right before that has to be released. So we had to scramble to get everybody situated, get the show together. So I apologize. I have not had coffee. So I'm going to have to, this is me trying to be over the top.
That's you trying to be over the top. If you guys want me to, I can go fake over the top. I sound like a game show host.
I have to tell you, Jamie's out of town. She went to a wedding in Arkansas. And so it's just me, Addison, and Aiden, which usually means just me and Addison because Aiden's working or playing basketball. He's a teenager, so he's almost like a ghost in the house. You don't really see them. All of a sudden, I come into the house. Jamie before she left, she was cleaning frantically, trying to get this smell that she could not find out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
Well, after she left, we had a nice warm day here in Michigan, and I have defined what I believe that smell is.
Okay.
I believe one of the cats have caught a field mouse and stashed them somewhere in the house.
Really?
Because we have crawl spaces in the basement and stuff. I'm pretty sure what is down there is a corpse starting to smell up the house.
That's possible. It happens here probably once or twice a year where a mouse will get in and either one of the dogs will kill it or it just dies of natural causes, and then you start hunting around for that smell because it's horrible.
Yeah, it is terrible, actually. So we've been trying to find it, and thus far to no avail. So the house stinks.
That's gross.
It is.
Remind me to wear a gas mask when I come over. That's nasty.
I'm not sure why I've decided to make this a public statement, but it's driving me bonkers. As I'm trying to clean up and move things around. Jamie comes home tomorrow. I'm trying to make it nice for when she comes back, except for the decomposing body somewhere in our home.
Yeah, that's gross. It is really nasty. Is it strong?
To me, it is. Aiden says he didn't notice when he walked in, but he's a teenager, so he doesn't notice much of anything other than food and basketball.
Yeah, I have two of them, I know.
And you can run around with all the Scentsy candles and turn them all on, but then you just end up with cinnamon smelled corpse.
That's not better.
No, it's not. So tonight, once I'm done working, I will be back on the hunt looking for whatever has passed and is making that smell unpleasant. Now, oddly enough, I have a lead into the show talking about that because yes. Think about this. If you had a tiny house, it would be way easier to find.
I don't know if I agree with that. In theory, it would be, but I think that you're underestimating the ability of people to add shelving and storage units in tiny little houses.
Well, I was thinking of just basically under the building, at least.
Well, you could pick it up and look. Just go whoop.
So, well, that would be too tiny. I don't think anything I could pick up and look could hold me. But this week I want to talk and build off of some of our earlier seasons about tiny houses. We talked about the freedoms and all these things that come with tiny houses. Anybody who knows me, that if I have nothing else to watch, I have learned that on my television, if with Roku, it takes the local stations and adds all the digital stations like it's one big cable thing.
Yeah.
And there is a tiny house station. That's all it does.
Okay.
It plays Tiny House Nation and Tiny House Hunters. That is it.
So like a Bob Vila version, like Build This Shoebox?
Yeah, it's one station dedicated to just tiny house.
Okay. I mean, I guess there'd be enough content you could create to make a whole TV station of. It'd be cute if it was themed. It was like tiny episodes. Everything was 5 minutes long.
No, it's Tiny House Nation. There's 3 or 4 shows that the same people do. And one of them is Tiny House Hunters. So Addison now, every time she wants to sit and watch tiny houses and we talk about designs, because Jamie and I were looking for land here locally and wanting to build our first tiny house. If we're going to retire in tiny houses later or a tiny house later, let's get a few out there. Let's try a few things. We can, we can try things, use it. When family comes to town, they can stay in it, can Airbnb it because we live in a town with an Amtrak station. People use the hotels for that during the festivals. When people come into town, they could Airbnb it. So the concept was, I want to build the first one and see what it's like and get a feel for it. That is much harder than it sounds.
It doesn't sound easy. That's something that, like, when you said this is what we're going to talk about, like, I don't think that making it smaller makes it simpler. I think your ability to put less crap in it because there's less space to store things will eventually lead you to a simpler life. But, like, it still has everything a house has. I mean, it still has all the plumbing, electricity, and everything else you're going to need. So I don't imagine it being simpler or easier.
Well, and we tried a couple of different things. It wasn't just, okay, we're going to build a tiny house. The first thing I looked at was, could I move a train car or a train caboose into town on the property and turn that into a tiny house? Because for those of you who don't know about Durand, we're one of the last few communities who really embrace trains.
You're cute that you think you're one of the last ones. It's not true.
Well,
not even close.
That embrace trains, really?
Owasso's right next door.
Oh, I didn't know that was a train place.
Where's the Polar
in case anybody's wondering, he's giving me these looks like his disbelief right now.
Just so we're clear, Owasso has the same amount, if not more, sets of tracks than Durand, and it's bigger than Durand. And they have the Polar Express in Owasso. Yeah, people like it just a little bit.
Okay.
A little bit.
Well, so I thought maybe buying one of these old units, bringing it in, setting it on the space, and using that to create a tiny house would be a pretty cool idea.
Sounds like a very expensive idea.
That is a shockingly expensive idea. Just to move a train car to a piece of land is a ton of money. Not to count the fact that it's going to sink.
My initial ignorant thoughts on this would be, one, most train companies don't like selling those things because they don't really go bad. I mean, they haven't really changed the technology on those things in how many decades? Like they use the same cars they built 50, 60 years ago. It's not like it changes very often. Second thing, they're ungodly heavy. Like they are not light at all. The wheels on them alone probably weigh hundreds of pounds.
Yeah.
And then the third thing would be, what would you like? Get a fork truck if you can find one strong enough and pick it up and put it on a trailer? And then how does that even work? Does it have a motor? Crane? Okay.
Crane. They have to crane it usually onto another train or something to get it close and then move it from there. But just the concept of having a ground space strong enough for it to sit on, which means an extremely thick cement slab, is all in itself a problem. So that quickly went away because what we did find, we found a caboose that the people wanted $15,000 for, but it would cost more than triple of that to get it here and put it on the space.
Where was it located?
That one was in Indiana.
Yeah, it cost $45,000 to get it to you
and get it in place. Yep.
It's a little outlandish, but okay.
Then we found I always say it looks like a Greyhound bus, but it's a like a big silver stainless steel passenger car.
Mm-hmm.
And they only wanted $10,000, but it's twice as long.
Mm-hmm. And probably twice as heavy.
It was going to be very, very expensive to bring onto the property. So that quickly went away. That was no longer a thought. Unless a train accidentally stopped on the property and unhooked, there was no way of getting something like that with our finances, at least, to make it worthwhile.
And I want to note that if it accidentally stops on the property, that is, in all intents and purposes, a train crash. So, I've always thought that they were really cool concepts, and we have the one here in Montrose that started off as a caboose, and then they turned into an ice cream shop that they called the caboose, and now it's like a full-fledged ice cream store that you would never know it used to be a trailer, but it was. I think they're really nifty. I think, and if you were trying to look for something that was structurally really strong to build a house in, I think it's a great option. don't think that it'd be economically wise to try to move it off the tracks. And whenever you get it someplace, you're not moving it again. I mean, it's stuck there. So
So that was no longer part of my concept. I could probably do it with a bus or something like that. But then it was okay. There are tons of places because tiny houses has kind of boomed after 2015. They started to go up and up and up in sales, and now there's several builders. We have them here in Michigan. And so I thought, well, shoot, they've got preset designs, something that when you buy, they put on your land. Then I only have to connect to the city water and sewer and do a few other things. That wouldn't be half bad either.
Welcome to the world of manufactured housing.
Kind of, yeah, it really is. And it's just on a trailer that's smaller than the manufactured houses, where they quite often have to bring them over in two pieces or one big trailer.
You might as well just buy a trailer from a trailer park and move it to your land.
Well, first of all, I don't have land, so I started looking at.
Okay.
And the first thing I found when I was, I'm gonna be that old guy who's like, when I was a kid, not even a kid, when I was a reasonably functioning adult, most land was about $1,000 an acre, rural land. In our rural community here, you can't get an acre under $15,000.
Just hilarious since you're surrounded by farmland that doesn't get farmed. It's
Yeah,
all empty.
you would think it'd be pretty easy to get a couple of acres at a reasonable price. Well, Jameson's family bought several acres here in town, spent a significant amount, I believe, and then found out that you couldn't use it because it didn't have access. There's massive ditches all the way around it, and you have to put in the big culvert and a new driveway. And from the research and the people they've spoke to, it's anywhere between $20,000 and $30,000 just to put the driveway in. And so now they have all this land that the only way to access it is through someone else's property.
That's always fun.
And if I remember correctly, they still spent, $15,000-$20,000. I could be wrong, but I think it was somewhere in that window. So that's problem A, is that the whole concept of going tiny is to reduce the cost and to keep things inexpensive. So to me, the expense was going to be hooking up to the city water and sewer, and that's not even the major expense anymore. Now, land is quite a bit higher. So setting that aside, I was thinking, well, we'll find a place. Let's go and just price out these pre-designed homes. Oh my.
That's hilarious. Keep going.
Oh wow. Pre-designed homes. Any of them that are not okay, so the tiniest of trailers, those 150 square foot ones, those are still what you would call semi-affordable. But most of the ones I was looking at were the 285, 350 range for square footage, and the prices I found were anywhere between 60,000. Yep, that's where I'm starting. I saw some as high as $100,000.
Yep,
that is not more affordable, and that drove me nuts because the whole concept of tiny living is to have this smaller cost, smaller space, so that you can go live. And instead, it is now $100,000.
So there are two ways to look at this, and I'm going to tackle both. At least two ways that I see it. One is the misnomer that it's more affordable or that it's cheaper. It's not. When people say that, what they really mean is they want cities to put in tiny houses, tiny homes for the less fortunate and for people that are in rehab or people that are homeless have a place to live, because at that point it removes the whole premise of buying land and having to do any of the work. They want the city to do it, so they paint this picture of being cheap and affordable. It technically is if you compare it to building like a brand new house. The other part of it is that a lot of the more, I'm going to say, romanticized tiny home stories are ones that people built them themselves, and they took a storage, like one of those big metal container storage units, or they took a bus and they built a house out of it, and they made this precious little adorable thing, and people fall in love with that. And that's great when you're doing it. You're doing it yourself with things you found. You're being, I almost said resourceful, but recycling things into making other uses for them. It's awesome. But when you talk about an industry where they have found this niche market where people will pay outlandish money for tiny houses, it's the best way to put it is, if someone is going to pay the bill, someone is going to write the bill. If there's an industry of people spending the money, people generally that have too much money, then they're gonna build it. It sucks how expensive they are. When you said the words $100,000, I cried on the inside.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So let me go back a little bit. Climate of where you live matters, because some of the states with the highest number of tiny house registrations are warm climates, which means you could quite literally buy the Home Depot shed, put in some climate control, and a few other pieces, and have a tiny house for well under $20,000.
Not in Michigan.
But not in Michigan. And that's where I want to clarify that, because I guarantee you we have a listener somewhere going, dude, I did one for 10. So Florida, Texas, Southern California, these are all places where they're seeing large booms for tiny houses. Those climates cater better. North Carolina is another one where they're seeing a bunch.
Yeah, there's no cold. It's easy to live in a place you don't have to worry about not freezing to death. Also, piping, plumbing, that's really easy until you have ice. Then it's an issue.
Right. So I want to make sure I say that, because I always forget that the world doesn't live in our backyard. Because I'm always talking about us and where we're at, and not always including everybody else. So I'm sure there are places in the southern United States where there is more affordable tiny housing, or you can buy brand new, even more affordable. But here in Michigan, I was really shocked by the kind of pricing I was seeing, because I really did expect the real nice ones being 30,000, not 100,000.
See, I wish I could say that I agreed. I mean, I knew they'd be expensive, but I can't help but remember the fact that this year I bought a old Consumers Energy office trailer. Now, this office trailer is maybe 7 foot by 12, give or take. It's wired for power. It has a window air conditioner unit in it that will, it's a huge air conditioner. So if I ever actually hooked it up to power, it'd probably freeze me out. In the dilapidated shape, I bought it for like essentially a storage container. But in the terrible shape it's in, falling apart, I spent $3,000. So like, I can only imagine what something that size that's actually built for someone to live in and brand new would cost.
Like, I thought maybe a $30,000 or $40,000 budget would allow you to get something reasonably nice. Actually, I figured it would be nice onto a small piece of land and have it connected to all the city sewer and water. That way, not only could Jamie and I utilize it for family that comes into town, but again, the other concept was Airbnb it for now. And it would give us the experience of having one put in and learning all the rules. And because matter of fact, if I had a larger piece of land, I kind of want to just keep putting another one next to it, another one next to it, and keep trying different things and create this little community. Just to have it, because Durand does need more housing. But the cost of that was astounding. And I don't know if it's because of popularity. I don't know if it's because materials are high right now, but it didn't seem like those prices all of a sudden went up. That website seemed to have, like, that is the pricing that's been there for some time.
Well, it's probably like most things in life. It's a perfect storm of little things. You have one hand, depending on your area, the market, if people have the money. And you have to keep in mind, when I say something is a niche market, what I really mean is that when something is new and it still has that shine to it, people with money, and I mean lots of money, well, there's always going to be someone that goes, oh, I want to do that. And they don't think, they just write the check, and whatever much it costs, they're going to do it. Somewhere in this world, probably multiple places in this country, there are 7-figure income people living in tiny homes. I don't doubt it, but the fact that they're willing to spend that kind of money enforces the pricing these people are charging. And materials, I'm sure, have gone up. Everything's gone up right now. But I do think that the prices are a little outlandish for what you're getting. And I do think that if you're going to spend, $80, $90, $100,000, you should at least have a house on some land. And not that a tiny home is bad. I'm not saying it is, but like, it's very unique in itself. It's cute, it's catchy, but it's only useful for a certain period of your life. And for like you and Jamie, it would be essentially retirement. You're not going to move 2 kids in there and 2 cats and a dog. Like, that's not going to happen.
No.
So like, you're either, if you're single and you have no people living with you, it's great. And if you're at the end of like your working years and the rest of your family's moved on, they're living their lives, it's great. But for a huge chunk in the middle of your life, it's pretty redundant.
Yeah. So. Well, at least for where I'm at right now. Now, I could have one just as easily parked outside the back door and dabble. And for those weeks that I'm constantly here, have a bed to lay in. But I also live 3 blocks from here. So it's really easy to go home.
It's a 5-minute walk.
But the whole idea was I wanted to get to learn this stuff. I wanted to start going through those steps, because we plan on retiring in one. He's giving me that he's thinking it through look.
Yeah, I just had this epiphany that made me feel like an idiot. We're sitting talking about how expensive tiny homes are. How much did you spend on your camper?
Oh yeah, I think Jamie spent $16,000 on her camper.
And look how flashy that darn thing is. That's a pretty camper. It's got bells, whistles. It's where you got. I mean, it's literally a house on wheels. Like, and tiny homes are more expensive than that, and they get a third of what you get.
I would hope that they're made more durable because campers aren't.
But I understand that. But we were just talking about people in tiny homes having a Home Depot shed. So I don't think they are. That was the brain where my brain went. I was like, wait, hold on. We're talking about campers. Campers are tiny homes, like, and they're super expensive. All right, go on.
Well, and ours is very basic. We do not have as many bells and whistles as you may think. It is shelter with a refrigerator, a small kitchen, and a bathroom we don't use.
Define tiny home again.
Yeah. Yes. I would hope in a tiny home, for us, it would have to be made more sturdily. There's no way I can live. The camper feels like balsa wood every time I touch things, so I spend most of my time outside of it.
We are kind of like bulls in a china shop. Nazarians don't do well with we're just gonna say wicker.
Right. So the goal is that when Jamie builds things, she makes them stout. She just turned the poles going to the upstairs of the deck into a play area for the kids, and probably has $1,000 worth of wood in there. Like if a tornado comes through, the only thing that's going to be standing is my deck and those stairs. The house is going to be gone. So if she was helping on the inside or building too, it would be much more sturdy. But I don't know. I guess I was more shocked than anything because I was hoping that it was something that would be more affordable, something that I could build, maybe even put a renter in, build another one, and just keep doing that to get a good idea. I wanted to, start doing solar panels and things that I understand. But you can't even get started, even reasonably. The only way you would have to do it is to build it yourself. And materials these days, I think you're going to still be in the $30,000, $40,000.
Well, I don't doubt it. And I think that's kind of where I was going with that, is that you still have to do everything you have to do in a regular house, just on a smaller scale. So for some things, the plumbing and the electrical, if you're going to put a furnace and air conditioner, that kind of stuff, you're going to work it into the design. Takes a little more technical know-how, and I guess I'm going to say spatial awareness, savviness, like how to fit that stuff all in there. And so people are going to charge for it. So you're going to have this guy, assuming you don't have it planned out yourself, some guy is going to charge you to draw blueprints and design it. Then you're going to have another contractor, if he's not the same guy, that's going to have to do all the work. Like, people want to be compensated for the time. It's not going to be cheap. And that's before you even get to materials.
Right. Well, then there's other things like in Durand, you can't just buy a city lot and put a tiny house on it. You have square foot rules. You can't have a house smaller than this within the city limits. And if I remember correctly, it's significant, like 1,000 square foot.
I'm torn on this, Michael. I don't like houses in city limits that much. I think I understand people are going to hear me say that, and there's going to be a riot in the street, but I think cities are for business. Cities are for commerce. That's what a city's for. I don't think that, and if there is housing in cities, there should be apartment buildings. I don't think you should have, boom, this beautiful city right in the middle of it, the mayor's house with 20 acres. Like, doesn't make sense.
I mean, we all have city lots. It is significantly small lots.
Mm-hmm.
But being a old train community, all of our houses used to be multi-unit. So there's all these houses throughout the city that are large, that either are or used to be multi-unit for the people who came off the trains on a regular basis. So what they did is they said, well, we don't want to have this big house, that big house, then a tiny house, then a big house. It will look really silly. We want a minimum square footage. Mm-hmm. And that's what they did for new builds on houses, which I have some understanding of. I get it. If you're in the city, you have limited space. You want to keep the property tax level high enough to be able to maintain the city, and you don't want it to look grossly out of whack. But we did the same thing with apartments. All the apartments above the retail buildings. And by the way, I don't necessarily fit with your mindset, because I think densifying and putting residential in with your commercial is how your commercial survives and you reduce sprawl. But even the apartments, we had rules that they had to be at least 600 or 700 square feet, which means we had all this open space in the top of the buildings that no one would develop because it was under that square footage. And we found it while going through zoning. As you know, I'm part of the planning commission, so we go through these things now that we're finding out that tattoo parlors are labeled under sex trade and all these other rules that we haven't changed since the 20s. We're kind of going through them all, and that was one of them. Like, if we're going to revisit this, let's revisit it. And I pushed to get a 0 square footage minimum, because I believe that Too small is the one that doesn't get rented. I don't believe there is a too small if someone was willing to rent it. And the more we have, the more we've densified the city. The city and I went back and forth, or some of the planning commission members, and I think we settled at 300 square feet. And then each additional bedroom would be 100 more in requirement. But at least it opens up the tops of those buildings for the owners to develop them if they want to.
So I need to go back and kind of clarify my intention with something I said, and then I need to give my insight on something else. When I said no residents in the city, what I was in my head envisioning were on like usually the main two roads, like Main Street, and then whatever the secondary main road is that crosses it. Those are meant for commerce. Now, in terms of city limits, like where you live, which is out in the outskirts of the city, yeah, it makes sense to have housing. I'm talking about like the town I live in, like right downtown. It's like gas station, church, house, businesses. And it very much limits the ability for new businesses to come into the community because they don't really have a whole lot of buildings to choose from unless they want to buy a house, demo it, and build something from the ground up or convert the house into their business. So there's that. And the other thing I was thinking about is I'm not overly familiar with Durant's history. I don't know a lot of it, but I'm familiar with Owasso and I'm familiar with Montrose. And both of those places, the really big, tall buildings, like where they have these huge apartments, used to be businesses themselves. When the buildings were first built, a lot of them had, like you guys said, furniture stores upstairs or banks were upstairs or stuff like that. And so when the times were changing and the businesses were leaving those upper floor spaces when they passed legislation for apartments, I understand putting a limit on the size, but I don't agree with it. There is I'm trying to remember which building it's over. I want to say it's like I think it's the main building in Washington, Owasso. But the building itself is huge. Like the one that's right on the corner, it's where Funny Page's comic shop used to be and stuff like that. And it's huge. And the entire upstairs of this building, because the buildings on the bottom has been broken, like sub-built into several shops. Upstairs is one huge apartment. Like it is well bigger than, it's probably two of my house. Like the living room alone is the size of my home. Like it's huge. And they rent it for like $600 a month because no one wants to live there. Mm-hmm. A friend of mine when I lived in Corona, I helped her move in, and I was astonished by it. I got up there, and it was like something you'd see in a New York loft, like in a movie, like when you were a kid. You're just like, whoa. And everything was intense except for the bathroom. The bathroom was very, 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 very bad. But the rest because there was the apartment, then there was the attic, the top floor, and the top floor used to be a church back in like the early 1800s or whenever the building was built. And so like the top floor of this building has got this like 25-foot tall stained glass window that faces inside of the other buildings, and so you don't even know it's there unless you're standing in the attic. It's tremendous. The original. So at one point there used to be a bank at the top floor too. So the original vault door from the early 1800s is still built into the wall. Like it's a really cool space, but it just no one lives in those places. No one wants to rent them. And I imagine you probably have buildings that were similar, like the Durant. I mean, you got a lot of big old buildings there,
right? And that's what we want is people to renovate the tops of those buildings and create housing. One of the things about Durant is we don't have enough housing. We don't have multi-unit housing, or not nearly enough multi-unit housing. There's a subdivision going in on the south side, but they're putting up their first houses, and the price of those first houses is $250,000.
Yeah.
We need housing at all levels. I would love to see efficiencies because I got to tell you, high schoolers just going into college or just starting in the workforce, these are people who don't want 1,000 square foot house. They don't want a 1,000 square foot apartment. They want to spend as little as possible and still have a place to call theirs.
Well, it's not really what they want. It's what can they afford? What's even available to them at their price range?
Well, and that, both. Yeah. Seniors could have small housing like that and be perfectly content with that option. So, and that was where my argument came in with the planning commission was, listen, the minimum size is what people are willing to rent, not, because in a lot of cities, in Japan, in New York, there's a lot of places where 200 square feet, 250 square feet is not, that's a good size. It's all in efficiency, all one room.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not uncommon. Just because we're used to being everything going big, we're used to having the largest of everything, doesn't mean that there isn't people out there willing to spend a little less to have less space.
Well, I truly believe that our consumer culture has done a great part in that, where they've kind of bamboozled people into purchasing space they don't necessarily need to fill it with stuff. Like I'm sitting in a room right now, and that, as you know, if my wife and I, when we move, all this stuff around me is going. I might keep a couple small things here and there, enough to put inside a small case, but I have no reason to really have all this stuff other than nostalgia and the fact that I like it. So it's all going to be liquidated.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, the moment the kids are out of the house, Jamie and I will be doing the same. In some cases, we're already doing it because homes collect clutter, and we're trying to reduce that clutter. Because to me, clutter equals anxiety. And I just feels like the walls are closing in no matter how big of a space you have if there's stuff everywhere. And she likes that clean look with less stuff around too. So we're starting to just get rid of things.
I don't like a lot of furniture if it doesn't get used. It's the best way I can put it. Because furniture holds stuff. Now, obviously, couches hold people. But if you have an entertainment center, okay, so it's got a TV on it. That's great. And then depending on, what you have for technology, it might have a Blu-ray player. It might have knickknacks. You might have a shelf that has a 4-foot Saturn rocket on it. It just, listen, I got Pound Godzilla behind me. My point is that we're all going to have things that we probably don't need, but we like. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that, like in my home, when you have a piece of furniture, we cover it with crap. Like we just do. We have tons of stuff. And when we move out of this house, I'm not taking hardly anything with me. I'm getting rid of all my furniture. I'm starting over, and I'm doing everything as minimal as possible, or as minimal as I'm allowed to do.
Right. Well, and that's the other thing is when you have a family, there's only so far you can go sometimes. There's certain things, and I'm going to say certain things Jamie wouldn't allow, but let's face it, she could easily vagabond her way across the country in her camper and be perfectly happy. It's me. There's certain things I just couldn't do. So that is part of that understanding. That's why we wanted to get something to kind of quote unquote practice and be able to try and see what we like and don't like, because the camper isn't quite it. Like we had talked about if we retired in Hawaii, coming back to the mainland in the summer, that was good. That was pretty much going to just require a motorhome to be able to go from place to place to place. But getting used to what a tiny house is, we can't do that in our house. Our house is huge. That's why I wanted to look into these, start working towards, and I'm notorious for trying to get Duran to try new things. So I want it to be something that they see, something that they go, oh, that's kind of cool. It's a whole nother one of those. I saw it on TV and here it is in our town, but I haven't figured out how to do it yet, not effectively or affordably.
But it's more so you need to do it to show the town that it's not big and scary. Because in fact, if anything, it's the opposite of big and scary. But people don't really like new things in that town, so you have to kind of show them that the dog won't bite. And
there was a piece of property that is right across the street from the smokehouse restaurant that was a strip. It was just a strip of land. And I was thinking, how cool would it be to buy that strip of land, put one small one there, get it being used on a regular basis, use that income to do another one, and just have a little strip of these little tiny houses that people can lease or rent from me in that space. It wouldn't look awkward. It'd be right across from the festival. It's just around the corner from the Amtrak station, and it would be right in the middle of town, kind of, so everybody could see it. If I had the finances to put one there, I would still have to fight the battle because it would be illegal to do what I wanted to do.
Well, I mean, yeah, and I think you may not know it, but there'd be a lot of battles. People would throw fits about it. You'd have, certain folks complaining about you bringing it. I guarantee it, but he wants to be a slumlord. He's going to bring in all the crime. Somehow it's going to go back to people stealing apples again. It's going to be ridiculous.
Yeah, well, I guess if anything, I've gotten accustomed to complaints, but those are the kinds of things. I wanted to have this episode because it was one of those things that kind of shocked me, because in a lot of states, tiny houses are a thing. California, Oregon, Texas, North Carolina, Florida, that's the top 5 tiny house areas or states that have tiny houses. Oregon and North Carolina, these are places that I don't think are grossly different than Michigan. And state-wise, we're actually pretty accommodating to tiny house living. It's just that when you go to do it, you run into so many roadblocks.
I think that maybe you're just phrasing it wrong. Maybe you should just call them hunting cabins, and I think you'd get a lot more openness to it.
Right. Well, no one's going to allow me to put a hunting cabin downtown.
Bet you if you call it a hunting cabin, they might.
Right. I understand that. And I also even understand the concept that I would want it to look like the other houses. I wouldn't want to bring in containers and do some of those container house things because it would just be too modern of a look in the middle of a small town. Is just not going to fly. I get all that stuff, but it should be it should be easier. It should be more cost effective than what it is. And I hope that changes.
Well, I hope it changes too, because I do think it's a little outlandish, and I think that maybe Jamie should just start them. She should start building them and selling them. She could cut the cost in half.
Well, her brother does sell trailers.
Okay, back to motorhomes and campers again, Michael. We're calling them tiny homes.
Well, in case anybody wonders, I'm not a fan of the mobile tiny home because I don't know if you watch those shows, they're like, okay, we built this wonderful thing. It's in their budget, but then they take an $80,000 truck and move it because they can't. It's so heavy. It is a house, not a camper. So they have to have a 3,500 to drag that thing around. That is also not that cost effective. When the vehicle to move your home to places cost more than the home, fuel efficiency and all these other things. And plus, I always think of the physics of it all, and it's doing this every time you move it. The house loses integrity each time. Plus, I really want to get a hold of the people who make those in those shows, because where are they getting their water? Where are they getting their septic? Because they always go, well, we have a composting toilet. That's great, but you also have a shower. Like, that water has to go somewhere, and you had to get water from somewhere. So I don't know if people are moving to land that they always show it on this nice piece of land. Did they have a well put in? Did they have a septic put in? Those kinds of things. But no, it's just things that pop into my head as I'm watching this. It's just more cost, more issues with the concept.
Oh, that's the thing is with anything in life, anything at all. When you start thinking about it deeper, you're going to find that the deeper you think, the deeper it goes, and there's more complexity than anything and everything. So
right.
when you look at life, it's not going to be as easy as you want to be, or as apparently cheap as you want to be, although I do think the prices are grossly inflated.
Well, if anybody out there is listening and you have figured it out, send it to us. I would love to see either A, what you've done yourself, or B, if you're one of those manufacturers, you're one of those companies, and you're going, it is not nearly that expensive. Send it to me. I'd like to see it, because everything I'm seeing around us is no different than just buying a house when you're said and done. So I would love to see what I'm missing, because I am obviously missing something. So that's all we had for this week. I want to thank everybody for listening, taking a little time out of your day and sharing it with Nick and I. If you like this episode, share it with a friend or on social media. That's how we get seen. It's pretty much one of the only ways. If you want to help realistic sustainability, click a like, click a follow, or just leave us that 5-star review I'm constantly begging for, because, it's great for my personal self-worth. I like to read them. It gets me all warm and fuzzy on days I'm pouty. And last, if you think that realistic sustainability is one of those shows that brings value to your life and you want to help us financially, just go to greeningyourlife.org/podcast. There's buttons there to be able to either A, do an independent single donation, or you could be someone who kind of sustains us in the long term and does a monthly for as low as 99 cents. We greatly appreciate any support that you give us, no matter how you do it. And remember, we get together each week just to get a little bit better. Little bit, big bit. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Mike.
And I'm the heartthrob Nick.
He is. And we will see you next week.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Learning should always be fun. It's proven. When you make it fun, kids will remember. Here at STEMnetics, we believe in teaching kids about science, technology, engineering, and math by building projects. These students are building robots, rockets, electrical circuits, cars, and much more. STEM surrounds us, and the biggest companies in the world are tech companies. Let us help you support your little scholars and prepare them for the future. For more information, visit us at STEMnetics.org.